Joining us right now is a man who defied the odds and lived out his dream. He has wrestled all over the world. He's an ECW original, a former WWE wrestler, a trainer, and one-third of the infamous BWO. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Blue Meanie.
Hey, well, thanks for having me on the show. How you doing?
Doing great, man. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to talk a little bit later about, on April 16th, the Icons of Wrestling down in Philadelphia. We'll get into that a little bit, but, let's get right into it. If we start a little bit at the beginning, how did you initially become a fan of the sport that we all love, pro wrestling?
It was very simple. I was just, I was a 7-year-old kid channel surfing, and I just, a friend of mine was, I invited my friend out. I was like, hey, let's go down to the park and, play whatever. And he's like, I can't. I'm watching wrestling. I said, what's wrestling? And I went to his house and we watched it. And the main event was Rick Martel and Tony Gurria losing the tag belts to Mr. Fuji and Mr. Saito. And from that then on, I was hooked. I don't remember the matches before that, but I remember, the main event and it being a title change and the important and everything about it just made me fall in love with it. So, it was just, I was like, that's it. I'm hooked.
Sure.
How did you translate that fandom into a career in the wrestling business?
Just, it's something I've always wanted to do, and when I, got into high school, I started, reading the newsletters like Dave Meltzer's and Wade Keller's, and there was ads for wrestling schools, and then there was one for Al Snow's school, and there was one for Malenko School, and when I was playing with the person from there, they also represented Al Snow, and the economics of it. Al Snow's school won, but to me, it was just the best choice I probably could have ever made, just because Al was just, like a big brother. He's such a great trainer. Not saying Malenko's wasn't, but I think my career ended up a little bit better just because of the connection I made with Al, not only as a trainer, as a human being. Mm-hmm. We connect. To this day, we're still best friends, and we still text each other random silliness each and every day. We're just like, he's the big brother I never had. Mm-hmm. So when I went there, he was patient, and he was, I don't want to say meticulous, but he made sure I knew step A before I went to step B, and not only did he teach me the stuff in the ring, but outside the ring, and mentored me in pretty much every aspect of life.
Sure. Now, like you said, fast forward a little bit, you've been training potential wrestlers for quite a while. Which do you think is harder, training to become a pro wrestler or training people to become pro wrestlers?
Well, it's not all me. I got to give credit to the rest of the staff at the Monster Factory. The current and new owner, Danny Cage, who's owned it since 2010, 2011. Him, Bill Wells, myself. There's also, player coaches, I'd like to say, in QT Marshall and Punisher Martinez, who's doing great stuff at Ring of Honor right now. We're like a five-headed monster. And to answer your question, sometimes it's harder to teach it, mm-hmm. because, growing up, I think I pretty much had I don't want to say I knew it all or everything like that, but when you watch it as much as I watched it, and I watched it a lot, mm-hmm. and pick up on little nuances and stuff like that, I kind of picked up on stuff quicker. Mm-hmm. So when I go to teach somebody and they totally don't do it the way it's intended to be done, it can be frustrating, but, hey, you got to start somewhere.
Sure.
And, that's the cool thing about us. We have 5 different coaches, 5 different philosophies, 5 different styles. And, it all comes together. You never in this business. You're never going to truly learn from one person.
Sure.
I'm a bit of a nut myself. Al Snow broke me in, but I trained with Dory Funk, Tom Pritchard, and then everybody in the ECW locker room, from Tracy Smothers, Tommy Dreamer, Tommy Rogers. Anybody who would, Shane Douglas, anybody would pull a guy aside and say, "Hey, that was great, but next time do this." Bam Bam Bigelow was a big influence on me, and he helped me in the ECW locker room. So, and that's the good thing about the Monster Factory: there's 5 different heads, 5 different brains to pick, and throw it in a bowl and mix it all together.
Now, you've had a long career despite not looking like the typical professional wrestler. Did you ever feel pressure at any point in your career to look a certain way?
Sure. I guess everybody, especially watching the '80s stuff with the big guys, big muscle guys. But in hindsight, I don't think I would have gotten a chance had I not looked the way I looked. Mm-hmm. I got it because they needed a lovable, fat sidekick to the whole concept was a lackey to a lackey. So Stevie was Raven's lackey, and I had to be his lackey. And he tried to dress like Raven, but he wore half shirt and Daisy Dukes, so to make it even more absurd. Here's this fat guy in a half shirt and Daisy Dukes. So if I had looked like Charles Atlas or whatever that bodybuilder cartoon was, I don't think I would have got the job. I think I just would have, got lost in the shuffle and been like every other guy.
Sure.
So, luckily I was, being a big guy, and I like to consider myself agile and inspired by guys like Bam Bam Bigelow. I think that was my in. That was my hook.
Sure.
So, if I had any other choice, I wouldn't change anything really.
Mm-hmm. Great. Now, early on as a fan, who were some of your favorite wrestlers? Growing up, did you have any top 5?
Tough. Like I said, I mentioned Bigelow, Dr. Death, Steve Williams, Great Buddha, Terry Taylor. Growing up, people come up to me and say ECW was, their favorite promotion. For me, it was still watch UWF. I was a big fan of WWE. Don't get me wrong. That was, the drug that hooked me was, WWF. But then you see something as different as Bill watch UWF.
Yeah. And
it was just episodic television that when it ended. Mm-hmm. I was already craving for the next week's show. And, don't talk to me, don't say anything to me. I'm sitting in front of the TV, tunnel vision, staring at the screen. That was my favorite.
Sure. Now, as you started your wrestling career, did you feel that some of those may have changed as you started to learn more about the business? As far as maybe guys that you looked up to growing up. Maybe did you change your mind on some of your favorites, or?
No, just because there's so many. My taste changed. It doesn't mean I stopped liking one thing. It just means at any particular time I'm in the mood for something else.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
My favorite band of all time is Van Halen. Eddie Van Halen to me is the greatest guitar player in the world. But sometimes I'll be in a Pearl Jam mood, or sometimes I'll be in a Smashing Pumpkins mood, or a Black Crowes mood, or a Slayer mood.
Yep.
Depends on what mood I am when my feet hit the floor.
Sure.
Yep. When I watch wrestling, I could be in the mood for a brawl. I could be in the mood for, purely scientific match. I could want to watch Bruiser Brody, and the next minute I want to watch the Malenkos against the British Bulldogs in All Japan. So, who knows? That's why I hate giving specific answers.
Sure, yeah.
It could tomorrow. It could change to be somebody go, "Oh, well, I thought you said." Well, yeah, that's what I thought yesterday. So, but growing up, all my influences from my influences, and they're people I borrowed from, and so their armor into my armor, so to speak.
Now, you are arguably most known for your time in ECW. Did you personally feel like you had made it once you joined the ECW locker room?
I don't know if I made it. I teach this to all the kids at the Monster Factory. life is just like going to school. You might be the coolest kid in grade school, but once you graduate 8th grade and go to high school, you have to start over and you're a freshman. Mm-hmm. So you go through high school, and then you become the cool senior, and you're the captain of the football team who's most popular. But guess what? You graduate, and then you go to college, and then you're a freshman in college. Then you become the cool senior in college, and you're getting all these, scholarships and stuff like that, or you're getting all these chances, and you say you graduate college, you go to the NFL. Okay, now you're a rookie in the NFL, and you're carrying somebody's bags, and they're ribbing you and stuff like that. And then the pro wrestling business is a constant series of paying dues and repaying dues over and over again. So, once I was fortunate enough. I was only in the business like a year and a half before ECW, and I might have done good on indies, but once I get to a company that has TV and they have certain standards, and there's standards and ethics just like the wrestling business, but I had to reprove myself. I had to reprove myself in that locker room, just the way when I went to WWE, I did reprove myself in the WWE locker room. You just can't walk into a situation going, "Oh, I'm the king here. I'm the hot stuff. I'm the flavor, the whatever."
Yeah.
It's just about being humble and earning trust within the locker room, and just establishing yourself as a credible asset.
Sure. Now, shortly after joining ECW, you were part of something that was only meant to be a small part of the show. You, along with Stevie Richards and Nova, formed the BWO. Are you surprised that after all these years, the fans still remember the BWO so fondly?
Oh, it's amazing. This November will be the 20th anniversary, and we're still out there doing it. I couldn't have been happier with the BWO and happier with the people I did it with, with Stevie and Nova. And like I said, it was supposed to be a one-night deal, and the fans picked up on it, and, Paulie and Todd heard the crowd reaction the first night and said, "Hey, we got something here," and it became a vehicle for Stevie's, singles push towards the heavyweight title. Mm-hmm. And he main evented the first ever ECW pay-per-view. He was the co-main event, and me and Stevie had to be in his corner. I mean, Nova had to be in Stevie's corner. So there's not too many firsts in this business, and the BWO allowed us to do that first, and it still allows us to get together every couple months and go out there and do what we love to do.
Sure, definitely.
In the BWO, you were the Blue Guy, which was obviously a spoof on Scott Hall. Have you ever talked with Scott about your sincerest form of flattery?
Yeah, I mean, all those NWO guys loved the BWO. They knew what it was, and they appreciated it. And in ECW, Scott Hall did like 2 dates. And I saw him, and I was like, "Hey, man, I hope you don't mind." The BWO, he's like, "Oh, no. He said, he would rib, Kevin Nash. He would say, "Hey, since that's the Blue World Order, and the Blue Meanie's playing me, I should be the leader of the NWO." And they would just rib each other, and
Sure.
Well, I first saw when I first met X-Pac in WWE when we were both in WWE. I was like, "Hey, man, I hope they didn't mind." He's like, "No, they loved it." And so, it was cool that you do a spoof of something. We were like the Weird Al of wrestling.
Yeah.
Yep.
It
was all the fans could take it for what they want to take it for, but it was all meant to be respect from our end.
Sure. Now, after some time in ECW, you went on to wrestle in the WWE. As a fan of the business, how did it feel to make it to arguably the biggest wrestling company in the world?
Oh, I mean, it was just like you made it, I made it. I mean, I saw to prove myself once, they hired me. But, I mean, that's the promotion that made me fall in love with wrestling in the first place. Mm-hmm. And to me, it was just them paying me back for all the money I spent on the product.
Yeah.
Just
sure.
Nah, it was a dream come true. I still have my contract to this day. As a little keepsake, and it's cool. I got to go back in '05, and then they asked me and Stevie along with Joey Styles, to host ECW Unreleased Volume 3. They brought me up to the studios. We filmed a bunch of stuff, and it's just been fantastic. There's a reason why they're the best company, the biggest and best company in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's even harder to get in nowadays. But to get back in, I'm very fortunate to say I worked for ECW during their hottest period. I got to work, in WWE during one of their hottest periods with the Attitude Era.
Definitely.
So, I've been very fortunate.
Sure. And as we mentioned earlier, that you are training wrestlers at the Monster Factory. What do you think sets the Monster Factory apart from some of the other wrestling schools out there?
The determination of the owner, Danny Cage, is awesome. He is one of the most motivated people I've ever met. Danny Cage, not only he wrestled. He's a Monster Factory alum. He did amateur wrestling. Our other co-trainer, Bill Wiles, he's a Monster Factory alum. He did amateur wrestling. T. Marshall trained at the Monster Factory. He did amateur wrestling. And Punisher Martinez, I'm sure he did that as well. So you got four minds for both who trained at the Monster Factory, who did amateur wrestling. So they're pretty well steeped in, conditioning. Mm-hmm. We do a lot of, circuit training, stuff like that. The reason why the Monster Factory is the best school in the country is, or even the world, we're part of the Paulsboro Amateur Wrestling Club. So on one side of the building, we have all amateur wrestling. On the other side, we got two rings. We have a full weight room in the building itself. Mm-hmm. Full facilities, and now we also have a second building called the Monster Factory Recruitment Center, which is part of another company that also does boxing and mixed martial arts. So we have two buildings, two schools, and it's a fantastic place to, get your feet into the business because you guys, such great trainers, such great minds. And such great connections. I mean, so in this business, that's what it's about as well. So the Monster Factory is probably, it's definitely one of the, there's a couple great schools in this country, and we always acknowledge schools like the 3D Academy, Lance Storm, and all the other, some of the other schools, because you need to have a network of
Sure. Yep.
good schools, because sometimes we'll bring in trainers from other schools. We'll bring in Les Thatcher or something like that to show our students. And we go, hey, critique what we're teaching. And to this day, people still, we have endorsements from everybody from Les Thatcher to Ring of Honor. So and everybody else we've had in for a seminar. So and guys like Rick Rogers, the great Rick Rogers, who's one of the most respected trainers in this business, one of the best minds in this business. We have a great relationship with him as well. So, and 3D Academy and stuff like that. So, definitely, if you want to, break in the right way, go to monsterfactory.org and see what we're about.
The Blue Meanie's popularity seems to have only gotten bigger over the years. Are you excited to have your very own action figure? And what can you tell us about that process?
Well, it's so overwhelming. For a while there, it hadn't even dawned on me that I had never had my own action figure.
Yeah.
And and then I had seen that the wonderful company, Figures Toy Company, is putting out a line of Ring of Honor figures and independent wrestlers. So I hit him up. I said, hey, how would you like to be the company that puts out the first ever Blue Meanie action figure? And that's what got the ball rolling. And the next thing you know, I got a contract in hand. And right now we're in the final stages of, production. They sent me the artwork and I approved everything. I designed everything on it. I said how I wanted it to look.
Yeah.
They did their magic, and it should be. I'm hoping it's out. In time for the Icons convention in April.
Definitely. Speaking briefly, too, on wrestling memorabilia, you recently helped create a crate of wrestling goodness with our friends over at Pro Wrestling Crate. How did you get involved with this company, and how did you choose what went in the blue crate?
Pro Wrestling Crate's a great company. They were once part of Top Rope Tuesday, which was another great concept where they do a T-shirt for a week, and then then they start doing T-shirts, a new T-shirt a day. So, and they're so creative. They said, why not tackle the world of crates and do a pro wrestling crate? And it's run by a few guys who I've worked with, outside of wrestling as well. And they said, hey, we would like you to be a part of it, and to be the second one ever behind Mick Foley is such an honor. So, they would throw ideas at me, and I would come back and say, that's great, but how about this? Like with the T-shirt design, they sent me a rough draft, and I would give my 2 cents into it, and they would either like it or not, which thankfully they liked it. And, and then it was probably one of the most well-received the boxes I've seen. So I've gone on YouTube and watched some unboxing videos, and it's a joy to watch people's reactions when they do these unboxing videos and see how they respond to it in real time. So.
Definitely.
But Pro Wrestling Crate is phenomenal. I can't wait for the one they did with Kayfabe News was fabulous. The one they did with Mick Foley was tremendous.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'm so excited to see what they do for the 80s.
Definitely. Now, like we said at the beginning, you're going to be appearing at the arena soon for the Icons of Wrestling on April 16th.
Yeah.
What's your favorite part about these kind of fan conventions as as a wrestler who's been in the business?
Well, I love these conventions because they don't hurt.
There you go.
I get to meet the fans, and I don't get slammed or a chair upside the head. But I'm a fan. At heart. The one thing that it irks me to death is when you see somebody go, "Oh, these marks, these." It's like, stop.
Yeah, I know.
You got in the business because you're a mark. You work for $20 a night because you're a mark. You put up with half of the crap in this business just because you love and being a mark in the sense that you love what you do. You loved it growing up, and now you get to do it. You should love what you do. If you love it that much, you do it. So I'm a mark. We just happen to get a chance to play for the team. And that's why I like doing these conventions, because you get to interact, you get instant feedback, and, you just get to, and I treat these conventions like high school reunions because, at this point in your career, you never know where you're going to see somebody on another show again.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
We were doing a bunch of shows where it's like ECW heavy talent. People are like, oh, these ECW guys, looking to relive their glory. It's like, no, I just want to work with my friends.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another reason why I like doing these conventions. I get to work with my friends, get to catch up on life. A lot of my friends have kids now, and they're married and stuff like that, and I share my stories and stuff like that. So best of both worlds. You get to see your friends and your fans and have a good time. And then, not to mention, there's also going to be an awesome, House of Hardcore show that night.
Lightning round.
Your favorite Blue song? Is it Blue by Eiffel 65, Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain by Willie Nelson, Blue Christmas by Elvis, or Behind Blue Eyes by The Who?
I'll have to say Blue Christmas by Elvis because it was my grandma's favorite song, and it's also the song they played when me and Stevie went to Times Square for Christmas as the BWO. So there's that.
All right.
As part of the lightning round, we want you to explain your personal importance to the WCW pay-per-view Halloween Havoc 1990.
Oh, that I'm in the front row for as a fan. was that the one?
That's it. Yep.
Yep. I was there, and I think I'm in front row for that, and I think we chanted at Vader to use a steel chair on Nikita Koloff, and he did, and it was craziness.
All right. Who was harder to work under, Paul Heyman or Vince McMahon?
Neither were hard to work under because they gave you opportunity to really do whatever you want. But with Paul Heyman, there's a little bit more fearlessness. I love working for both. I'm not, I'll gladly work for them again if I had to do it all over again. But I love the rebellious spirit of ECW. ECW is punk rock. So as much as I loved working for Vince McMahon and making money, the spirit of ECW was so much fun.
All right. Now I went to school in Philly. The biggest question in Philly is about cheesesteaks. What's the Blue Meanie? Pat or Geno's? Pat's or Geno's?
If I had to truly pick, I would say Tony Luke's. Oh. But if I had to pick between Pat's and Geno's, I would say Geno's because I've gotten to know the people there, and they've always been very cool to me. And I got they gave me the special treatment of actually eating inside. I got the time to go and all that stuff. So Geno's gets points for brownie points.
They always say in this business of wrestling, you have many acquaintances but very few friends. Who's your best friend in the wrestling business?
Oh, best friend in the wrestling business is Al Snow. He's a guy I talk to on a daily basis, and like I said, I wouldn't be here without him. There's plenty of times I wanted to quit, and he talked me off the ledge. And heck, my second day of my first day of bumping, I thought to me, he had to get I was about to get on my get back in my car and drive back to Atlantic City from Ohio. So. But yeah, absolutely, my best friend in this business is Al Snow.
All right, and last but not least, other than wrestling, what is the Blue Meanie passionate about?
Other than wrestling, you said?
Yeah.
My passion is just music. I love wrestling and music.
All right.
Those are two things, if I'm not watching wrestling, I'm listening to music on the radio or watching a concert or something like that. It's great escapism.
Awesome. Now, in this land of social media, where can the fans keep up with you these days?
Besides being on America's Most Wanted, you can find me at Twitter, twitter.com/Blue Meanie BWO. You can find me on my Facebook page at facebook.com/Brian.Heffron, HEFFRON. Right now I'm at the max, so there's a little button where you can click follow, and you can follow me on Facebook. On Instagram, you can find me on Instagram at Blue Meanie BWO, and at Pro Wrestling Tees. If we've talked about the BWO. If you want a BWO shirt, go to prowrestlingtees.com/Blue Meanie. And I got a few other things in the works right now, and they'll be coming out soon. So at a later date, I'll announce that. But if you want to come pester me, no, I'm just kidding. If you want to come talk to me, that's where you can find me.
Great. Well, Blue Meanie, we thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see you at the Icons of Wrestling on April 16th. Thanks again.
Awesome, and you have a great night, and thanks for can't wait to meet the great fans at the Icons Fest.